Hi, my name is Blake Block. I am a computer information systems major at UAM, and this is my case study. Michael Kirby's 2002-2003 case study. The case study was called pair programming case study. It wasn't a super creative case study. But in this case study, we're introduced to a collaborative technique called pair programming. And in this study, Michael Kirby is attempting to introduce this technique to his software engineering firm. And the way he plotted it out for us it wasn't super extensive. It was actually about the only way that you could go about it. But before we get into the case study, we need to understand what pair programming is. And it's a super simple idea. It's two people, one computer, and one shared goal. That could be anything from opening up a shortcut on your computer to debugging a massive section of code to try and figure out why the program isn't working the way it's supposed to work. Now, the driver is the person who sits in front of the computer. He runs the mouse, the keyboard, he does all the clicks, he all the way, and then the navigator, he is the person who sits next to the driver, and anytime that the driver comes to a point where he's not sure what to do, or he's having an issue, with a certain line of code, or he's unsure of what tool to use on the computer, what compiler to use, that is where the navigator steps in. The navigator kind of sits back and thinks about the issue while the driver is actually working on the issue. So you can see how there's kind of like an ebb and flow to the entire thing. So initially you can look at this technique and you can see that it could be extremely useful with a senior level programmer and a junior level programmer. The senior being the navigator and your junior being the driver. But what happens when it's a senior or even a junior? What would that look like? And that's what we get to see in Kirby's case study. So throughout the case study, there's 7 sessions that he documented, all of which, except for one, could be seen as successful in providing higher productivity in the workplace, more things being accomplished. But one thing that he did note was that his programmers, being in these sessions for a long time, anywhere from 4 to 12 hours, and even longer sometimes, was that they were notably tired, which means they were, more tired at the end of the session. And then if they were to continue this for the entire week, they tended to be even more just utterly exhausted towards the end of the day. Now, there were 2 sessions in particular that really stood out to me, and one would be the one that we would consider a failure, because it resulted in almost not as many things getting done, and you could see that the productivity actually was lower. But the issue was not with pair programming. It wasn't with the technique pair programming. The breakdown actually came in the communication. Michael Kirby refers to it as aggressive listening, and rather than saying I don't understand, she would say that's just not going to work, because she didn't understand what the question was. She just assumed that it wasn't going to work. And so we see that in pair programming, there has to be some level of effective communication between the driver and the navigator, and a general understanding of each other in order for it to be somewhat successful. The second one that was very interesting to me was the pair between the senior and the senior. Now, why this was interesting was because the navigator was actually playing catch up. The driver had been working on this problem, and he had come to a point where he was very unsure of how to fix the problem. And so he was paired with another senior engineer, and where the breakdown was in this particular session, eventually they were able to work it out and move forward, but the breakdown in the initial chunk of this session was that the driver had to stop what he was doing and explain the entire problem to the navigator. And the navigator kind of had to play catch up. And another issue that we found in this session was that anybody with any experience in anything, when we come to an issue with something, we are experienced enough to kind of have an idea of how we want to fix the problem. And so when somebody else tries to come with us, it's almost more difficult to collaborate because we already have an idea of how we're going to try and go about fixing the problem. And somebody else might have, say my navigator would have a different way he would want to go about it. So there was the breakdown in that. And all of the sessions relatively, resulted in higher productivity. The issues or the successes were all based on three things. They were based on solid communication, the tools on the computer, everything being set up the way it needed to be set up in order for everybody to be successful. And three was that the pairings needed to be senior to junior, and if they were senior to senior, they needed to start on the problem at the same time. So this has been my review of a case study done by Michael Kirby called Pair Programming Case Study. Thank you so much.